Backrooms, and why are they so captivating? And to be clear, I'm not talking about the A24 movie. Well, I am, and will be, but not just the movie. I'm talking about the viral YouTube series it's based on, and the internet post that series was inspired by, and the Reddit communities and video games and short films that swirl around that post. I'm talking about the Backrooms, the place. How and why, exactly, did it hit so hard? Let's address the first part of this question, in case I'm beginning to sound like a rambling lunatic to you. The Backrooms began its life in 2019 as an anonymous internet post on 4chan, a place of nightmares in and of itself. An anonymous user posts this picture, and another user describes it as a place between places. The Backrooms. No clipping out of reality, some video game terminology for stepping outside the structure of the game to the space behind it. The Backrooms, says Anon, is, quote, nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell heard you. This is the whole post. But like a select few other creepypastas, Backrooms caught fire and inspired a Reddit community that created so much lore off of this one concept, it spawned a second community that exists just so that you can talk about the original Backrooms without having to deal with all that lore. And a third community that exists so you can pretend you're stuck in the Backrooms but still have access to Reddit for some reason. Then, Kane Parsons stumbled across the post and decided to make a short film almost entirely in Blender of someone exploring the place. That too goes viral, helped in large part by the fact that it fucking rocks and the dude's kind of a genius, and almost immediately, Hollywood was interested. He turned the video into a series while simultaneously developing the film, and now here we are, 2026, and there's an A24 movie directed by Kane, produced by James Wan, Sean Levy, and Osgood Perkins, whose existence can be directly traced back to a lowly, anonymous post. Not to mention that Dan Erickson has credited the post as an influence on Severance, plus that American Horror Stories episode. We could be here all day. So that's the how. But why exactly did so many people feel inspired by this post? Funny enough, the picture itself has actually been floating around the internet for years. Backrooms hype was such that people searched high and low to eventually uncover its true source, a photo of a Wisconsin furniture store mid-renovation circa 2003. So clearly, the appeal wasn't the actual photograph, but its caption, a description of an endless maze you can just accidentally find yourself trapped in. And that's undeniably true, but let's explore that for a moment. Would this concept be so captivating if it depicted and described a labyrinth of stone or a hedge maze? No. The Backrooms is specifically and explicitly a place of endless fluorescent hums and sickly yellow wallpaper. It's a place of efficient modernity, spreading infinitely outwards, consuming you. Kane's YouTube videos are timestamped to the late 80s through the mid-90s. Now, this could be just a preference for the analog aesthetic, or it could be just to help hide the rough edges of the original one-man CGI effort. But these decades were also a time in America where corporate capitalism, white-collar life, had seemingly crested a hill to stand on top of the world. America, and by extension Western civilization, was a mall. It was a cubicle. It was a place of 1,000 drop ceilings, and as the story goes, all would be well from here on out, so long as you clocked in and clocked out on time. Now, today, popular sentiment is pretty vehemently against that notion, and sane people know that was all a lie. But sane people felt similarly in the 80s and 90s too. And if you'd like proof, check out any 90s movie that's described as being Gen X. The catalog is all people railing against being trapped in this maze. When you see this picture, what do you immediately feel? Surely not joy. Maybe you feel nothing, but for many, it's dread. It's a place you could blink and realize you've been stuck in for decades. It's a place where any original thought or creativity goes to die, where you go to die, where the best case scenario is that you are utterly alone for eternity. Loneliness is intrinsic to the Backrooms.
Is there anybody here?
The original post mentions a minotaur of sorts, but most of what we see in the best of Backrooms art is emptiness, man-made nothingness. Liminal spaces, a term you've absolutely heard, are part and parcel to the Backrooms. Their popular resurgence possibly even inspired by it. Places that should have humans occupying them, but for some reason, some likely horrible reason, don't. If you grew up playing video games, specifically the first ambitious 3D worlds, you're familiar with spaces that are meant to feel occupied, but due to the limits of the engine, don't. They're unnaturally devoid of life, which makes them feel something worse than empty. They feel wrong.
The early 2000s office buildings in video games are a great place for that weird Backrooms vibe.
A lot of these games were buggy nightmares, and if you explored the wrong place, well, you might just noclip somewhere even more lonely. For many of those original posters, for people like Kane Parsons, that language of noclipping was immediately relatable and vivid. The DNA of video games can be found in most interpretations of the Backrooms, in ways that are often conscious but additionally always present in an unspoken way. Imagine being surrounded by what is meant to be the pinnacle of human technology and ingenuity, and you still feel nothing. You still feel alone, a creature chained to a cubicle, a cog trapped in a machine. Kane's original YouTube stories tap into the anxiety of modernity pretty explicitly. Spoilers for the series if you haven't watched it, but also it's free on YouTube and very good, so go check it out and come back because I want to talk to you about it. The first video was of a random person stumbling into the Backrooms, who then spends the entire runtime baffled as to where they are and how they got there.
You gotta be kidding me.
But subsequent episodes begin to focus on a mysterious research institute called ASYNC, which seems to have been experimenting with pocket dimensions, either creating them or finding doorways into existing ones. When they succeed in opening a doorway to the Backrooms, essentially tearing a hole in the fabric of space-time, upending our understanding of reality, their initial reaction is of awe and wonder, but that doesn't last long. Because ultimately, the powers that be at ASYNC decide that the best thing to do would be to make a little money off of this endeavor by parceling off this endless, maddening, monster-filled place, a place that only feels like the real world, but is wrong in ways that are at once so obvious, but simultaneously so difficult to put your finger on. Tearing at the back of your mind, scratching it until you bleed, they decide to rent that place as storage, to put in cubicles. The Backrooms, in essence, is captivating because we are, all of us, trapped there right now. But many didn't have the words to describe our maze until we saw a humble internet post. Let's try to end on a more positive note with a brand new question. What are the Backrooms and why are they so captivating? And to be clear this time, I'm not talking about the Backrooms, the maze, the concept. This is not an extremely good joke about you are being trapped inside this video. I'm talking about the fact that there's an A24 movie, a YouTube series, multiple Reddit communities, and video games, and an extensive wiki that swirl around that original post. A single idea, posted anonymously, spawned countless expressions of creativity, strangers bearing their souls on the internet, often with no promise or hope of any financial gain whatsoever, just humans wanting to be creative together. Maybe it's fitting that people with such pure creative sparks would be so disturbed, so moved by a place that stands in stark contrast to that, and seek community in its loneliness. So, what are the Backrooms? They're one of the few good things we've gotten from the internet. A collective writing project in which there actually is no right answer to the question, what is the Backrooms? There is only a communal joy in exploring that idea together. That is what makes them so captivating. For me, all of this is what makes the Backrooms really hit. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps people find this video. Also, If you watch this and were intrigued at all by this sort of liminal space genre, we cannot recommend enough that you read Piranesi by Susanna Clark, as well as House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. We really wanted to get more into the possible House of Leaves inspiration connection, but it felt like just a bit too much of a stretch, and yet we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention it. So there you go, House of Leaves mentioned. Okay, I'm no clipping out of reality. Goodbye.